Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our fifth ACT-CTU clinical trial rounds. Today, we will be presented by one of our own, Dr. Thao Huynh, and she is going to tell us a little bit about her experience in clinical trials and some of the tips and pearls that she has learned that has helped her to conduct some very successful trials. And we hope that it will benefit all of you. To tell you a little bit more about our guest speaker, she is a cardiologist and epidemiologist, associate professor in medicine, PhD in public health and epidemiology at McGill University. She has successfully initiated and completed several investigator-initiated multi-center studies with industry and CHR support. These investigator-initiated studies focused on knowledge translation, quality improvement projects for acute and chronic cardiac conditions in Quebec. She is the principal investigator of Impact COVID-19. This is a prospective cohort 1-year follow-up study of patients with post-acute COVID-19 infection and cardiac disorders. This study has won funding from an international investigator-initiated competition of Pfizer Incorporated. There are 257 patients currently enrolled in the Impact COVID study. The information gathered from the study will provide important insights into the pathophysiology of treatment of patients suffering from cardiac diseases post-COVID-19 infection. And without further ado, I will pass the word on to our guest speaker, Dr. Thao Huynh. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Dr. Pilot, for inviting me for this talk. So because of my accent, maybe I may be hard to understood. I will try to go slowly, but I don't want a dialogue. I don't want I don't want a monologue. I really prefer as a forum open discussion. You can interrupt me anytime. Actually, I enjoy it because it makes it less monotone at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when people are tired. It's really, I meant it as a workshop rather than as presentations, more informal. So without any, this is a talk that I actually have tried to get the literature to help me. And finally, I couldn't find anywhere any good textbook or manuscript on how to conduct a successfully clinical trial. So this is from personal experience accumulated over 30 years that I hope to share with you so that you don't have to go through the growing pain that I have been. And please interrupt me anytime. Sorry. Okay, screen sharing, PowerPoint. That's very strange. Sorry. Okay, not sure what happened here. Let's try it again. So, clinical trial I have been participating is a mixture of industry-sponsored clinical trials and also investigator-initiated clinical trial that either I have designed or my friends, my collaborators have asked me to. Most of the time is multicentric international. Some are in single centers, and most of them are randomized double-blind, but it can also be open treatment arms or crossover. Let me see if I can hold off. I'm not sure. Let me see if I can take off the preview of the participant because I don't want to distract you. Hold on. Okay, sorry. How can I take away? Okay, sounds good. So I'm old, pre-retirement, hopefully soon. So this is a summary what I have achieved over the years. We have done after the first 150 clinical trial, we have stopped counting. And we've done more than 200 now, mainly phase 3 and phase 2. Why I didn't do phase 1 is probably because we don't have, when I started, there's not much facility that was available for phase 1. I know that SIM now has phase 1. I'm a clinician, so I also prefer to do phase 3 and phase 2, where the patient do see the benefit more immediately rather than phase 1, which is more healthy volunteers. I am also a bit biased against phase 4. I think phase 4 is often more commercially promotion of a molecule. Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know. But this is my, our group strength is phase 3 and 2. So in the PEACE study, which is a study of ACE inhibition of a medication for a heart attack, we as about 100 global sites across the world. We actually number 11 best recruiting center for the NIH, and we recruited more than 100 patients. And in 2012, WASF is warfarin versus aspirin for patients with heart failure. We were designated as the best global center in 2012 for the number of patients recruited, but also the quality of our work. And for studies of heart failure, we often top 5. And many company designated it as essential center, unavoidable for coronary artery disease and heart failure. So this is the achievement that we have been accomplished. And I owe it to many, to our team, and especially Ms. Boudreau, who may be in the panel. She's a fantastic project leader. So all of that, and despite many limitations that we have at our center that I have to talk about, so we actually, cardiology is very non-dominant. Most of our cardiology division is at the Glen. However, most of the clinical trials are done at the Montreal General. I think because of the strength of our investigator, there's our group, and there's also Dr. Esselbach, who has been very successful in recruiting for clinical trial. And we don't have cath lab, so we have a limited pool of patients. We don't have our fellow clinic, and despite that, we will still be able to enroll a lot of patients with acute coronary syndrome and heart failure because we send our personnel to the Glen to recruit. Unfortunately, there are a lot of structural issues. Our IRB application are very lengthy, and the multicentric system have scared a lot of company away. They're telling me that they don't want to deal with Quebec, especially hospital-based sites. They do take into the clinical outside hospital. The clinics are based outside because they don't have to go through the multicentric. It's a very painful process. I hope the RI will be able to improve this issue because it does take away sponsors. And for CHR and investigator initiated, this is the same problem also. So why bother to do clinical trials? Clinical trials is for me is a lot of like unpaid work. And being available around the clock and without any recognition financially. I have not stopped doing it despite all of this because of my desire. And I'm sure that most clinical trialists also feel the same way. We want to improve science. We want to collaborate in making breakthrough discovery. Every patient counts, and even with 60,000 patients, we still need collaborators, we still need PI, and we still need research coordinators in making this possible. North America and Europe is well recognized in the quality of their work, but there are some countries where clinical trials are not done with the same quality, and people may not be randomized in the correct way and not follow in the same way. So North America is still favorite in terms of being picked as a center to do clinical trials. We want to improve also, and this is the second point, is very important to me, is that in this system of care, when our patients have to wait forever to have a family doctor, to see a doctor, and I just think that by participating in clinical trial, patients get the better care. They actually follow it more intensively. Nurses call them, nurses make sure that they get the medication, even for matters that are not clinical trial. We went beyond our duties. We really bent over backward to make sure that they have everything medically related that we can help them with. And studies have shown the patient on placebo will fare better than patient not enrolled in trials, even when you adjust for baseline characteristics. So they do improve, and the placebo effect is real. So the patient clinical trial and in our group and also in other several MUSC groups, they do benefit from more optimal follow-up and more support. So that is why many clinical trialists and I are still doing it, because we really want to make a difference. Even if it is small, it's still important for the patients.
If I can
And
interrupt with a comment,
sorry,
there's something in the chat that I would like to read to you, if
yeah,
that's okay.
please. Yeah, please. Yeah, can
Uh,
you do that? Yeah,
from
go ahead.
from Adrian Wright, just a comment. You mentioned the lack of good textbook resources. Bert Spilker has a good book titled Guide to Clinical Trials, although it is old, from 2005. But I take its industry focus on conducting trials might be different from the academic medical center site setting. Just a comment.
Yeah, sure. The clinical trial, I'm not going to tell you how to design it. It's not the role of this one. It's understand from Dr. Pilat. It's more really practical tips. So the how to design clinical trial, there are plenty of books. But how to participate and how to do it well, I couldn't find any. So thank you for the comment. This is a maybe different question. It's not about the design. Okay, so why also it has given me an opportunity to collaborate with worldwide leaders, the people who I would never have the chance to meet. And by doing clinical trial, I get to talk with them, to exchange ideas, and also give us the opportunity to be back in the future that made us aware about future development at least 5 years in advance of current standard practice. Just as an example, you all know about DOAC, the anti-10 anticoagulant. We're now talking about factor 11 antibodies. So like everything is like we know about the future 5 years before everybody else. That is true. Not all drugs make it to the market and become approved and safe, but it's still fascinating. And the last thing is it remunerating? Actually, no. Clinical trials are now very laborious. Sponsor ask for a lot of things, CIHR also, and the amount of funding that is given is just barely covers nursing costs. If you manage it well, you can have some small funding to do your own investigator-initiated studies, but don't do it for the money. It's not worth it. You can do other much more remunerating activities. But overall, I do it, and I think other people are doing it because mainly it is actually exciting. You help the patient and you get to know what science will bring to the global world 5 years in advance.
If I may interrupt again.
Yeah.
There's another comment from the chat from Dr. Louise Pilot. You mentioned great success with being among best recruiters. Recruitment at the MUHC has been raised as a big issue. Do you have any tips or recommendations?
Yes, it is coming to the next forward few slides. So I hope I can, so far, I hope that I can motivate you to do more time, but now how to do it. So that is why we talk about the why. Now we will talk about the how. Sorry, not sure. Okay, so how to become a clinical trialist? I don't know if in the audience there are young people who also, like me 30 years ago, hope to do this clinical trial. So don't try to do it, or you can do it alone, but the path will be harder. Start with somebody who you know in your specialty, that's an established investigator. You can start as a co-investigator first to learn the role. There are a lot of paperwork and there are a lot of acronym. And when I started, I didn't even know what a PI is and the word principal investigator. I didn't know what CRF is, which is a case report form. So all of that, if you have an established investigator that you can ask to help them with their studies, or have a study that you can be the PI, but ask them to help you out as co-PI. Most people are very open in sharing the experience and expertise. Again, how do you get your own nurse and how do you get your own research coordinator? Don't try to hire somebody else on your first trial. It's very expensive. I would suggest share. Ask other investigators that if you can contribute into a salary of 1 day or two. And if you're looking for trial to do, ask again your senior investigators if they can refer you to people so that you can get balls rolling. That's how I did it. Is that I contact the people at the other heart institute. I didn't know anybody, but I just called them up and said, "Listen, I am interested. I have plenty of energy to sell. Can I help you with any trials?" So don't be shy. You have to go out there, make sure people know you, and people are actually in the academic world. People are actually very nice. They always want to have young people uh, have a successful career. So don't be shy. Call. So measure of success, and this is how to become a solicited clinical trial site, either for CHR, peer review, or for pharma. It's actually the first will be the number of patients recruited. Always, this is important for every trialist. They want the most numbers so that they can finish the study as quickly as they can. But it's not just quantity, it's quality. That your research documentation has to be extremely clear and complete. So this is where North American, we are still people trust us. They don't think that if you go to other countries, there globally, there are China and India and also Eastern Europe, when patients can be recruited and are all very fast, but the research quality may be put into doubt. So this is the quantity and the quality. And do clinical trials, you have to be aware that you're gonna pass a lot of time, that everything is your fault. If your research coordinator forgets something or does something wrong, it's your fault. You cannot say that it's not my, it's your responsibility to oversight. Whatever happened at your center is your own problem. When the Health Canada FDA come, if your personnel didn't do the right thing, it's you who are gonna be put into on the spot. And the farmer or CHR also wants that we have it's not just recruiting the patient. You have to be able to at least keep them all, even if they don't take the drug anymore, because they want 100% of survivor documentation. They want to know at the end of the line, anybody who died or not still alive. As an example of clinical trial, we had done one, which is 20,000 patients across the world. There are only 3 missing survivor status, because company are very worried about that. Whoever is last to follow up, and if they're on the study drug, they will be assumed dead. And if they are on the placebo trial, they assume to be alive. So the last to follow up can change the outcome. So this is crucial. And this is why it's not just about the number of patients that you recruit. You have to make sure that they are good research patients, meaning that they're compliant to medication, that they will come to follow up, and that you can always track them. So this is crucial, is the quantity of patients, your quality of your work, and you have to be able to maintain almost close to 100% of like the patient survival status. You have to know what at the end of the trial, whether they're dead or alive, if they're healthy or not. And this is from my research coordinator, Ms. Boudreau, and her secret is in the sauce. Or le secret dans la sauce en français, et the secret is really about the team. It is a teamwork. You cannot do it alone. So multidisciplinary work is key. And how I'm gonna separate the task of the principal investigator and also the task of the coordinator. So the investigator, you have to be available. That's the word, and that's how I was able to maintain the majority of my personnel over some of them has been more than 20 years. It's much more than a marriage per se. So this is, if you're not available, they will leave you because they want somebody that they can always rely on and that they have to be able to contact you. I have taken to be available even when I was in remote areas, Asia, anywhere you can mention, so they always can reach me. So this is crucial. And if you cannot be reachable, have a co-PI that you trust 100%, because your research personnel are dealing with drugs that can be very dangerous, and they need to have guidance. You cannot be one day here and one day there, and they cannot reach you. Yeah, and I always answer my email, my text, my call, like within probably email not always on time, but my text I do answer within the hour and so on. And the last item on this slide is I always make sure that they feel appreciated and valorized. And the first, with the beginners, the research coordinator is a farmer or CHR. They always tell me that they feel like they're selling something. And I tell them, no, you're not selling anything. The research is not for the coordinator's well-being, but it's to improve the patient's health. That is, if they don't want to participate, it's to their loss, not yours. You're not selling. And I really mean it. We're not here to sell anything. We're just helping to improve science. And maybe the patients, that individual patient, can benefit from either the research drug or the placebo, just a follow-up. So just make sure that your personnel feel they're not salesmen. It's important because they're not in the academic world, they're not in here to sell. And this is, you really have to make sure they feel appreciated and valorized. And it's just not about gift or anything. It is more, it's not monetary. They have to feel that they're doing something good for science. So as I mentioned, we are, as the investigator, we're complete oversight. It's always better that they talk, they email me, they text me for something that may not be that important, rather than something that is important and is not related to me. Because at the end of the line, it is the PI, it's the investigator who's responsible for everything. I delegate a lot, but I also document on delegation. And you have to make sure that the company are aware that you delegate. So this has to be transparent, all hands on the deck. And you cannot do everything. Delegate as much as you can, but document it and make sure the sponsors are aware that you delegate. This is the last item, is actually the most of my colleagues, several of my colleagues stopped doing clinical trial because they say that they're losing money and they actually it's not worth their time. It is true, there's not a lot of money considering the amount of work that's asked, but you have to negotiate all contracts. What the doctors, I don't know if there are any doctors in the audience who are PI, But doctors, we don't like contract. We don't like numbers. So coordinators often don't feel it's their role to negotiate contract. So the contract with the budget often come and sign. Nobody asks any question. We as a team, we pick every single line and negotiate. We ask for about 30% more for each item. If you ask for 50, it's probably too much, unless was really under budget. But you have to negotiate, because at the end of the line, you never know when when you have no more contract. And also, like even some things such as mailing an item, they would just, companies sometimes just reimburse you the mail cost. But remember, somebody has to package that item. So always make sure that personal time in handling medication, handling research product is counted. And often that is actually what is the most expensive, not just the item itself. So remember to negotiate. It's not for you, like the money don't go to my bank account. It's really for the to be able to do more studies after, and for my personnel. If you don't want to cure yourself, delegate, but document it, all hands on deck. And remember, you are completely responsible for every single act of your research personnel. Sounds like a big task, but if you train your team well, they actually do most of the work for you. So the research coordinator, who is the la perle, the pearl. So they may not come all perfect, but you have to train them, make sure that they're meticulous, that every item, the I is on the dot, that they have to work hard. I do make my research personnel be available for the weekend. And some trial, they have to be on call at night and sometime, and they have to come in at midnight to spin my blood. So I know my nurses do work extremely hard, so try to compensate in other ways. But clinical trial don't stop at 5 often. So make sure that they know when they get the job that they have to be prepared to work off hours on the weekend. If you have a potential patient do not wait, windows do close. And also we have had all kind of unexpected circumstances. They have to be able to troubleshoot. So I think important to have a project coordinator, a lead coordinator who can coordinate, because we have a big team. And if everybody is doing things their own way, it's not good. Yeah, it's important to have somebody who overlook all of your personnel and make sure that everything is coordinated, that vacation time that they cover. Because again, pharma don't care, and CIHR also wants the deadline to be fixed. No, they don't care if it's research, if it is vacation time, if it is Christmas time, you still have to work around the clock. And the research coordinator has to document every single thing. If you have done something that you didn't document, then it's considered not done. If you can argue back and forth, if it's not written down, then it did not happen. You can do late entry as long as you document. And the medical record is the source doc. That is, always make sure you can write in your research note, but it has to be also in the medical record so that it is available for monitors. What is left for the research coordinator? You ask when in doubt. Don't assume that it sounds logical and you may be right. But when you're in doubt, ask the investigator. And the protocol is your Bible. There's sometimes the interpretation of wording may be difficult and you're not sure. Then check with your investigator, check with the helpline. And you have to be patient also. Some studies are so tough You may have to screen 100 charts to be able to randomize one patient. Do not give up. And for clinical identification of patient, even on the ward, is usually if you approach 10 patients, there may be only one who will accept. So don't feel bad. Everybody has to do it, and it's just the nature of the beast. Persevere. So how do you obtain consent? We are in this business, in this world for the benefit of the patient. We're not there to sell medication for pharma. So I'm always very transparent. I want to make sure that all my potential conflict of interest are disclosed to the patient. Just as an example, with our study of COVID that is sponsored by Pfizer, I do disclose to the patient that I'm sponsored by Pfizer, but they can have any vaccination that they want. I personally don't care, but they have to be vaccinated. So anything that can be considered as a potential conflict of interest, you should disclose. We do disclose that the study is sponsored by the pharma, but also that you don't have direct benefit from it, and try to explain the consent form in simple terms. Right now, the consent form is made for grade 6, although it's supposed to be for grade 6. Most consent form are 10 pages and over. It's like, I wouldn't even read it myself. It's just very like intimidating, the consent form. So what I do is that as much as possible, some studies are very urgent. The treatment of heart attack, we have only a few minutes to get the consent form. But if not, we do allow enough time for patients to review consent. Please do not pressure them. If they feel pressured in any way, even if they accept, they will not be good research patient. So some people just say, when you hand them the papers, they just say, oh, it's fine, I can sign. Don't. Always tell them I will come back tomorrow or in an hour or so, but make sure that they have time to read the consent form. And it's best, I find it best to explain the consent when the family is around. At least it's transparent. The family know that they're doing the study and then understand why. And sometimes, especially the older patient, they don't always ask questions, but their family do. So it's better to explain face to face rather than the patient sign, do the study, and then an angry son or daughter call you back and say, why did you do that? So just make sure that if they are around, if they're not around, then ask the patient, can you call them, just to make sure that everybody is on the same wave, that they agree with the patient to do the study. And in this way, in this slide, there's also a question of French or English. And as you know, we're dealing with very diverse patient population. Some of them do not speak French or English. So there's a translation process also that you have to be aware, and sometimes it can be lost in translation. Unfortunately, you just have to accept the fact that the patient with different mother tongue than English and French, that you hope the families explain to them well. I'm not sure if the audience is aware, but some company, especially those in America, actually exclude patients who cannot speak French or English just because of this. I went to BATA, but they refused. They say, we absolutely require patients to be able to speak French or English. I find this very discriminating because that's also take away of the benefit of a potential trial for this patient. But the American company are allowed to do so. Sorry. Okay, so important in obtaining the consent. And I have seen people giving a consent form to patients and say, well, if you want to get better, please do this study. That is not informed consent. Make sure that you tell the benefit that it is, and also is that we don't know. We don't know that they're gonna get the placebo or not. So make sure that they understand the placebo concept. Do not exaggerate the benefit. And with the 11-page consent form, I often, the first thing I give it to the patient, I open it right at the adverse effect page. And I do tell them that even if an adverse effect is as rare as 1 in a million, we still legally have to put it down. But I do go over the adverse effect with them because that is what they're really scared of. So as an example, try not to use percentage that much. They actually is more easy for patients, especially those of lower education, is that they understand more 1 in 20 subjects than 5%. I am not a mathematically inclined person too, so for me it's also more easy to understand. Like make it in a layman language. And when they often they start to freak out when you see 1 page of adverse effect, reassure them that the clinical trial safety, by the time they get to our hands, phase 3 or phase 2, the phase 1 safety has been diligently reviewed by the FDA in Health Canada so that the safety is already ensured and that the potential benefit outweigh the adverse effect. So that's how I tell the patient. So when I hand the consent form, I actually really just go directly to the adverse effect, the page, and go over that with them. So this is because that is what the patient really wants to know. So again, we are very diverse clientele of patients, and this is my perception, and you may disagree, but this is after like a few hundred clinical trials. Women are more reluctant to participate in trials. No time, too busy. We don't have any papers, and I keep thinking about writing a manuscript to document this. But when you see clinical trials, and actually in cardiovascular, it's about 30% of patients over and over again. When we make more than 50% of the population, in cardiovascular disease is more an older population. So it kind of the 30% of female really reflects the reluctancy of the woman to participate in trials. So what I do is that when they keep coming up with excuses, I sit down with them and I try to see if I can solve the obstacle. But I don't want to be too pushy though. Sometimes they just invent any reason not to do the trial, but that's fine. Then you just let them go. Don't push. We just try not to pressure anybody. The next one, coming from a visible minority, I have to say, patients with diverse ethnicity may be more reticent to do the trial. It just is not in their culture. I didn't put down, but I have found that Asian, especially mine, Southeast Asia, are not. We just don't believe in it. We feel like cobaye. And this is a word when you know that when the patient is saying the first word they tell you, "Oh, you're using me as cobaye. Don't waste, don't waste your time." It's just they're very negative against the try, no matter what you try. I just hate the word cobaye. It's a really I tell them, and when I do try to explain to them they're volunteers, they're not cobaye. And it's true, the media have the newspaper, the Fifth Estate has done a lot of bad press for clinical trial. But be sensitive of the ethnicity. Some countries' culture are not open. What I have found surprising is that indigenous are actually quite open to trials, that they somehow very trusting. At least in the medical world, they're trusting, but it's a challenge to enroll them because of the distance. When we bring them back, we try to schedule a medical exam at the same time because you're not allowed to bring them back just for research. But the indigenous is actually great to work with. So this is, but we be sensitive to diversity. There's still a lot of work to be done so that patients are more open to trials. Okay, so communication is key, and this is probably our most important tip. You have to make sure that they can reach the research team at any time. They have my email, they have our nursing phone and pager and so on. Like I respond to the email within the day, and I always make sure I have good relationship with family members. This is crucial because the family members can be very negative. And when I finish a trial, I always make sure the patient's connected to another doctor or myself, that finishing the trial, they still my patient. This is important. Once a patient for life, and that it is a family for them, our research team. I always remember to invite them for other trial. And often the most patient want to do other trial. They keep saying, "Well, can you give me another research project?" So they just do it over and over again. Sometimes some patients we have like up to the 5th trial. They actually, to be honest, they don't really care about which molecule. They just want to be with the team. And at the last visit, we tell them this is just a farewell. We will see you next time. So they love our nurses. For them, it's their family. So how do you be successful recruiting? As soon as you hear about trial, as soon as you decide to participate in a trial, do a pre-screen, even before any contract, even before anything. I tell my nurse, I have a trial of obesity. Please list on the patient with obesity. We have a data set of our potential, of our research patient, and then you identify them. And always I've asked patients in advance, like for patients who go through our CCU, we ask them, even if we don't have a study for them now, can we contact them later so that we can tell them about clinical trial? But those of you who may not be aware is that as researchers, you're not allowed to contact the patient directly if they haven't given you the authorization. So it's better to catch them while they're in the hospital, even if you have no study for them. Just ask, can we contact you later for a potential research benefit? So I do have 50 minutes left for discussion. So the word evidence-based medicine was possible because clinical trial made it possible. For years, we have given very simple medication like aspirin, like heparin, without knowing whether it works. So clinical trial made this possible. And the innovation and numerous cancer is becoming curable. Treatment of heart attack is like we now to like 2% of mortality. When I started my training, heart attack is 50% of mortality. And you all have to be proud in making this possible. So I will stop here and answer the chat first. And then if you have other questions, we will go along. Sorry, let's see. Okay, we'll talk. Okay, so Dr. Wright, we know Health Canada likes to work hand in glove with the US FDA. Yeah, you're asking about the First Nation communities, marginalized BIPOC, is outlined US FDA guidance. Dr. Wright, do you have access to a microphone? It's always nicer to be able to chat. No?
Yes. Hi. Sorry, Dr. Huynh.
Yeah.
It's not Dr. Wright. It's just, and Adrian is fine. But yes, I would love for you to perhaps provide some insight into what is happening here in Canada with respect to the recent trend or push, depending on, I guess, your perspective, to bring in more underrepresented groups into the participant population for clinical trials overall.
So excuse my ignorance first before you answer your question. What is BIPOC?
Oh, it's Black and Indigenous People of Color. That's
okay. Okay.
older
So
acronym.
yeah, okay, thank you. So for your first question about First Nation communities, we have a major hurdle here is that if you want to do a study with First Nation, like all the population base, is that you have to ask the elder, the chief, and it is very difficult. I don't do it per se. I just do it individual patient who show up into cardiology. But this is a tough thing, and the Health Canada has not helped us. They kind of ignoring the elephant in the room. They keep saying, well, do more care, do more research in First Nation, but they do not give us a tool. I don't know if anybody in the audience have any tip or any personal experience about the First Nation? No?
Yeah.
How about Adrian, have you done it?
No, I mean, I'm coming from a background where I spent a good decade in the pharma side of things. So not on the site side, but did travel across the country, actually doing more of the clinical quality control and monitoring piece of this. So the push now obviously is very much welcome in the sense of trying to get more underrepresented groups, but it was not something that a lot of the pharma companies that I was a part of paid a lot of attention to in the past. So it's good to see that there's more attention to it, but essentially it looks like in Canada here, we're still sort of waiting for what the FDA does and to take a little bit of our instruction, if you will, from that. I know there's a final guidance from the the US FDA that's due out. I think it's actually now several months late. It was supposed to be due at the end of last year to provide guidance on how to handle particularly, I guess, race and ethnicity. Obviously, that's just two aspects of diversity, but it doesn't seem as though there is now, a real, shall we say, clear objective in terms of what Canadian sites will do. So that's why I asked the question. And it also, because you mentioned the openness of First Nations community to clinical research, I was just, and you also mentioned the fact that remote distance is an issue. I wanted to find out from you if the potential for decentralized trials and using technology to actually get at more remote patients is something that you've considered, or what your feedback is on that as well.
So with the decentralized trials, it's actually we have more experience with the peer review. They are less rigorous in terms of pharmacokinetic and also like physical exam and all those things. So there are some trials that we actually do, as you say, a remote care, but they are less than 5 fingers. And we haven't done for the marginalized, the homeless and the prisoners. We haven't done that mainly because they are not a really great patient. They're not very compliant. And I have to say it is a bias, but it unfortunately is true. So I saw a couple of hands, and Nicole and Dr. Pilat. I don't know which one's first. You go ahead.
Yeah. Nicole had her hand up first.
Oh, sure. I'm actually just hoping to jump into the conversation that Adrian has brought up around engaging more challenging to engage groups. And I think it takes a little bit of a mindset shift to really stop thinking about them as hard to engage and really think about the barriers that stop people from being able to engage. And so we actually do a lot of trials with people who are currently experiencing homelessness. And once people get into the trial, we really have no issues with adherence or retention, follow-up visits, contacting them. So it really is about meeting people where they're at and making sure that we've thought about what barriers already exist in traditional clinical trials that might stop them from participating to their full potential. In terms of the Indigenous group piece, the biggest thing you can do is actually go talk to those communities and get elders, knowledge holders, other champions on board, and make sure that your outcomes and your trial design actually work for the community, because you may find that the outcomes that are set in your, kind of main protocol really aren't applicable to the community, or they may not feel that those are suitable outcomes. And so engaging with those communities and those populations early will help to increase engagement in Indigenous groups as well.
Thank you for your comment. We haven't done that, but certainly it's a possibility. Louise, Dr. Pilat?
Yes, thank you so much, Thao. You really delivered the exact talk that I thought you would give, with your experience and practical recommendations, and being very realistic about what it is to conduct the trial and be successful at it. I wanted to ask you about the consent of patients, because we're working on universal consent and the opt-out kind of model. So it looks like you're doing that a little bit in the CCU, where you're asking them if they would like to be contacted later was a trial to be, adequate for them. So 2 questions. One is, in your experience, do people tend to say yes? That's first question. And second, the practicality of this, do you keep a data on the people who have agreed to be contacted later? How do you work this out?
That is correct. Yeah, we do collect the data, the identity of the people who agree to consent. Louise says, I went backtrack like about 15 years ago. We thought that the MUSC that would talk about making it the universal consent is that when the patient come to any clinical site, that they accept to be contacted for future trial.
Yeah.
As an example, at Montreal Heart, that when they sign in the admission sheet, they just say, you will be contacted. That is one way to do it. It's just like and only if you do not agree that you will, we actually use the reverse. We tell the patient, if you do not want to be contacted, please tell us.
Yeah.
So that's even more easy.
Mm-hmm.
We try both ways. And the one that the reverse, if you do not want to be contacted, let us know. That's the most expedient way.
And in your experience, do people in general want to be contacted? What percent would you say?
That is actually yes. They do agree to. So I think if you make it a uniform consent, like even on when they sign the admission sheet, or when they go to the clinical clinic unit, we actually do it in cardiology clinic too.
Yeah.
Like if they do not want to be contacted, then they will let us know.
Yeah,
Absent
opt-out. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe the more easy way. Only
Yeah,
if they
the opt-out. Yeah. So because so this is what we would like to do, but people raise a lot of practical issues and acceptability and kind of, so I'm glad to see that, people accept in general, and we have to see whether we can do it more like at the time of admission rather than clinic-based, so it'd be easier. But you also have to keep the data somewhere, and someone, an investigator has to be able to access it.
It would be more easy to do it the other way around, like only those who refuse.
Right.
So and you can do it in the
data. And then it has to be accessible to all investigators.
Or if we make it institutional level, like at the medical, the electronic record, that the patient do not wish to be contacted for research. As if we document the allergy.
Yeah. So it's a question of where, like in OASIS, a separate database, there's some practical aspects, but that would definitely help increase, the number of people who are enrolled in trials at the MUHC.
Yeah, because we actually do put when we do clinical trial, we put the consent form in OSS. So I think that anytime a point of contact, if we have something that the clerk can, you will have to work with the bureaucrat and so on. But if you have somebody telling the patient, do you wish to be contacted? No, sorry. Do you object to be contacted for clinical trial in the future, something like that. MUSC mission is doing research.
Right.
If you give a blank sentence, yeah.
Yeah.
And most of them actually do accept.
Good.
It's very rare the people who come back and say, well, no, I don't want.
Yeah. And then they can refuse later once, they change their mind also.
That's the thing. Yeah, so if you can do that, it'd be great. We'll help other researchers. Anu? I have one more comment. Anu?
Hello.
Hi.
My question is with the indigenous communities is related to the indigenous communities and First Nations. So I have started working on a project related to indigenous clinical trial research. And my question is, would you recommend anything or any tips if a researcher wants to do clinical trial research with indigenous communities? Like, are there any resources available out there which researchers should follow when they plan to engage in indigenous clinical trial research?
There are some, I think, I can't not remember the reference. Nicole seems very engaged in that. I certainly can send it to you later on. I don't know if you have my email, but send your email to me. The one thing is that most research on a population base have to go through their community, at their elders and their knowledge keeper. And they also the consent form has to be slightly kind of culturally sensitive also. But I think that they are ignored population. If we can do more research with them, actually they are very open to research.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question here in our room.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Huynh. It's Amanda Lovato. Actually, just a note for Anum, the ACT patient Indigenous engagement community actually has some recommendations for working with the Indigenous population. So I can send that out to you to help you with that.
Thank you so much.
My question was specifically regarding you said that it's important to have personnel be available on the weekends and after hours because it's important because science doesn't stop at 5 p.m. Do you have any tips for how you can compensate, how you can engage employees to keep them motivated? And yeah, do you have any tips for that?
So we always make them feel the success is the success of our team. I do in terms of practical thing, like when they do work off hours, it has to be financially adequate. Either you go over on double time or you give them time back. But also they take pride. They take pride in being the first #1 center in Canada. They take pride in it. There is as an example, we have a study of transfusion with an NIH, and almost all our patients are randomized over the weekend. The NIH couldn't really find it striking that we actually randomize much more on the weekend. My nurses come in; they're really proud. It's a question of pride. I think they feel valorized because they're contributing to science. But you have to make sure that they are compensated also in other ways, though, financially. And I don't do it on the weekend, not every weekend. It's mainly when I'm on call. So don't try to impose a burden too much. Also, we are a group of 3 nurses, so they do take turn. But to answer your question is in brief is that compensate financially and also make sure that they feel proud in what they do. They have to be happy and feel that they're doing something for human benefit, not for some farmer. This is crucial. And also for yourself, you have to feel that you are doing it for science.
That's great. Thank you so much for that answer and for this wonderful presentation today. I think we'll conclude today's session. If you have any questions, you can either forward them to me, Amanda Lovato, at rimuhc.ca, or Dr. Huynh, and that's it. So thank you very much and have a great evening, everyone.